Hi, I'm Mark Donovan from HomeAdditionPlus.com, and today I'm going to teach you the basics of how to tape and mud drywall. The first thing you need when you mud and tape a drywall is a bucket of joint compound. We have a small bucket here for the project that we're doing because it's a very small project, but typically you buy this in 1 to 5 gallon pails, and basically you need about 1 gallon for every 100 square feet of drywall surface area. The next thing you need is tape. You can either use this 2-inch paper tape that has a crease in the center of it, or you can use this sticky fiberglass tape that I prefer to apply to the walls. I like this because you eliminate one step of mudding in the process. Next thing you need is a taping knife. Usually I start out with either a 3-inch or 6-inch taping knife to apply the tape to the wall. And then in later coats, I use a wider knife to feather out the seam. Next thing you need is a mud pan for putting the joint compound in to work from. This mud pan has a nice sharp edge here so you can clean your knife as you work along. And finally, you need sandpaper. This is a screen paper, and then we have a sand block that can be used for, again, smoothing down the edges. Applying the tape coat layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to apply the fiberglass sticky tape, sticky side to the surface of the wall, and centered approximately in the middle of the joint between the two pieces of sheetrock or drywall. And then just take your hand and work your way down, pushing it in, pushing it flush up against the drywall. Now that we have the tape in place, we're going to take our taping knife and put some joint compound on it, and we're going to apply a little joint compound to the seam. And then make sure we get all of it tightly pushed in. And once we've done that, we just take our trowel and just kind of really press it in there. Kind of keep working our way down the length of the board, really making sure we cover all of the mesh tape. Want to be a little bit liberal with your application here. And we're not worried about getting it too perfect at this point. We're just trying to make sure it's nicely covering the tape. I'm going to try to take off the high parts as best we can. Just lightly touch. And that's all we'll do for now. We'll let this dry. Once we've covered the seams with tape and mud, we want to cover the nails. So we take our putty knife and just simply apply a little putty over the nail. After doing your main seams and your nails, you want to apply tape and mud to your corners. Simply take a piece again of the sticky tape and try to center, try to put it on or apply it so that the center of the seam runs down the center of the tape. With that done, take your taping knife and apply a liberal coat of joint compound to the seam. So once you've completed the first coat of tape and mud on the seams, let it dry, and we'll come back later and put the second coat on. Applying the second coat of mud. Now that the first coat of mud is dried on the tape, we want to briefly just sand down the edges of the mud around the tape and the nail areas. So taking a sponge sandpaper block, we just simply go over the edges around the nail, knocking off any high spots. And then on the joints, again, rubbing mainly on the edges making sure you get all the high spots off, and then leaving most of the material on the center of the joints as is. And with that, we're ready to put the second coat of mud on. Now we're going to apply the second coat of mud to the joints. Basically, put a thin film of joint compound over the seam, feathering it out, making it larger than it was before. Now that we have the seam done, we just go over the nails again, fanning it out a little bit more with the joint compound, feathering out around the edges, covering a fairly larger surface. We'll let this dry, and we will do a third coat. Now that the second coat is dry, it's time to lightly sand the edges again, and then apply the final finished coat of mud onto the seams. Applying the finished coat. Now we're going to apply the finished coat of mud to the seam. This is the final coat. You want to spread the seam out a little bit further, about 2 inches further than the existing mud. Nice and thin. Just work your way down the seam. So last thing we're going to do is put the finishing coat over the nail hole. With the finished coat of mud now dry, all we need to do is lightly sand around the edges of the nails and along the edges of the seam, and our mudding and taping is done. All we need to do now is just wipe down the walls with the rag, dry rag, getting off all the dust, and then we simply prime and paint the walls, and we're done. So good luck with your taping mudding project, and for additional home improvement information, visit HomeAdditionPlus.com. Thanks.